Like many of you, I've been thinking a lot about Titanfall 3. E3 is right around the corner at this point, and I know a lot of us are hopeful that we'll hear something about Respawn's next Titanfall in the coming days. Now, I'm not 100% that that's exactly how it's going to go down. A part of me thinks maybe we'll see something at Gamescom, maybe a little bit later in the year. I do feel like we'll get an announcement this year, but that we probably won't see the game released until sometime next year. That being said, I wanted to bring you guys one more Titanfall 2 loadout. A loadout that sort of existed, at least to me, as the epitome of what Titanfall 2 is, some of its issues, some of its strengths, and I guess the ways in which I might like to see those things evolve or change as we move into Titanfall 3. So, without further ado, I present to you guys my Prepare for Titanfall 3 loadout. As always, we're going to be kicking things off with our pilot firepower. Starting with our primary weapon, we've got the Car SMG. The Car really does demonstrate the superb hipfire accuracy of many weapons in Titanfall 2, but especially the weapons that exist within the SMG class. It is a pinpoint precision monster, especially when ADS'd, but again, even when fired in the hipfire position. It is one of the best mobility-focused weapons in the game, alongside of the alternator and really every other SMG in the game. Again, it's just kind of iconic at this point. The Car SMG is, I think, probably the most used weapon in the arsenal of many immobile pilot out there, while the alternator probably comes in close. And again, just about every single SMG in the roster, except for the Volt, can really shred face. This weapon does stand out to me, though, as the ultimate combination of all of those components that make SMGs so potent. While the alternator does have incredible hipfire accuracy and great damage output, it is a weapon that you have to work around a little bit. The same could be said of the R97. It has a very high fire rate. You have to work around it a little bit. The Car SMG is the one weapon in the game that you really don't have to burst fire. You can just kind of go full auto with it. Maybe in some hipfire circumstances you're going to want to burst fire at longer ranges, but if you can get an ADS on, this thing is practically firing all of its bullets in a straight line. It's like they're chasing one another. It's a potent weapon, and it does stand to represent, I think, at least one of the strengths or weaknesses of Titanfall 2's gunplay, depending on how you want to look at it. Of course, that's something that'll leave up to you, because everyone's going to have a different opinion on that. Moving on to our secondary, our backup, we've got the RE45. The RE45 for me represents the fun factor focused weapons of Titanfall 2. Weapons like the mini grenade launchers, the softball, the EPG, weapons that don't necessarily exist within the meta as the best possible offering, but that do offer a satisfying alternative to it, and which can still be effective in the right hands, even when you bring them down to their lowest possible state with something like a suppressor. The RE45 sounds great, it looks great, it's a lot of fun to use, and honestly, it's really satisfying to kill people with. Moving on to our ordnance selection, we've got the one and only Firestar. If you know me, you know how I feel about the Firestar.
In the tower already, heads up. Oh, there's two in the tower. Oh, shit!
That is impressive. Are you all up there? Because I'm going back.
No, hold on.
Somebody's up there.
Give me a second.
Thank you, teammate.
There's four of them up there.
Oh,
what are
nice.
they doing, man?
There really isn't a more quintessentially Titanfall ordnance in the game. It's the perfect combination of skill-based gameplay requirements, killing potential, and that oh-so-wonderful fun factor. There's really nothing like throwing a Firestar halfway across the map and dumping it right behind an individual who thought he was safe behind his AWOL, or maybe sticking someone midair with it. There's just a plethora of ways in which you can kill people with the Firestar, and each and every one of them is just as satisfying as the next. Let's talk pilot tactical. Today, I'm running Stim. Stim is, even after its nerf, an incredibly powerful pilot tactical that further enables mobile pilots who have developed an understanding of slide hopping to go faster than they did before, to make decisions and react to situations faster than they did before. It's almost like this catalyst that lets you explode out of the corner and get to where you wanted to go next just a little bit faster. It can be the saving grace in those clutch situations when you were on the brink of death. It's kind of broken in that sense, and it's a hell of a lot more powerful than Stim ever was in Titanfall 1, but it does fit well with the rest of the Titanfall 2 experience in that the whole game just kind of moves a lot faster than the first game ever did. However, like many things in Titanfall 2, it also acts as a buffer in a sense for players who might struggle with survival or mobility. It's honestly why I've always been okay with the current state of Stim. I do think it needed the nerf it got, but the situation it exists in now feels like it's a nice sweet spot that lets other players who maybe don't slide hop make use of its speed boosting capabilities to get them into combat or even out of combat in a situation where they otherwise might struggle. Stim's alright by me, despite its possibly overpowered potential. Moving on, we're only going to touch on pilot abilities because honestly it's one of the larger issues I have with Titanfall 2. I feel that most of the abilities are useless or too focused on the fun factor. Now I'm okay with an ability like Hover for example, but I do wish we had more abilities that tied directly into the game's core gameplay loop. Less abilities that felt like they were there for the sake of just being there, and more abilities that felt like they truly modified the way in which I played my pilot role. It's one of the biggest things I want to see in Titanfall 3, not just with pilot abilities, but with weapon attachments. Even with Titan abilities, I want to have an environment in which I feel like I can build a certain loadout for my pilot, for my Titan, for my weapons that caters to my own specific playstyle. The current state of pilot abilities represents something that is really the opposite of that. So while there are plenty that you probably pick and play with, I feel like there simply aren't enough to truly alter the way we play as individuals. It wouldn't be a loadout without touching on our Titan, and we are rocking the one and only Tone, the meme that I have essentially become at this point. The funny thing about that Tone meme is that I don't actually play Tone. In fact, Tone is one of my least played Titans in Titanfall 2 because at the launch of the game, Tone was an obviously broken and incredibly overpowered Titan, one that felt dirty even for someone like me who really doesn't care about who uses what, just have fun at the end of the day. It's not necessarily the best Titan in the game anymore since it was nerfed. I feel that there are other Titans that can potentially outdamage Tone, but I think it's still a Titan that will forever excel at its duties of just getting on the front line, doing damage, and defending itself in often, 1v3, 1v5 sort of outnumbered situations thanks to its core design. And this was one of the things I talked about with Tone way back in the video that I did talking about Tone being overpowered shortly after launch. The idea that she has a core combat loop built around her abilities that just makes her an exceptional Titan with exceptional damage output potential in just about any situation. Unless you modify how those abilities work and remove the core loop around locking on, firing missiles, and that salvo core, you're always going to have a Titan that is decidedly powerful. She'll probably never be like she was day one where you could just stack core after core after core. I mean, you could get 3 or 4 cores with Tone. Just keep detonating, your salvo missiles on people again and again and again. But again, that core loop will always ensure that she has incredibly high damage output, especially against players who decide to ignore her and act as if she isn't really a substantial threat. Moving on to our boost, we run into a similar situation as the one we had with pilot abilities. I'm running battery backup in this case because, well, it is a useful tool, especially when playing with a group of people who you're actually communicating with. I can continuously support someone like Iniquity, like Ishii, with the battery backup and keep their Titans in the fight a little bit longer. It does stand to represent one of the biggest changes Titanfall 2 saw from Titanfall 1, the modification of the rodeo system, and essentially how we damage enemy Titans while standing on their backs in rodeo. It really did change and have an influence how the entire core Titan system actually functions in terms of shields and health bars, and it's a direction that I'm still to this day not 100% I'm in love with. I mean, I like the idea of the batteries, but I can't necessarily say I like the changes that the concept of the battery system made in turn to Titans, their health, and their existence on the battlefield. Either way, the battery backup is just one small part of the many boosts in the game, many of which I feel, again, suffer from the same issue as pilot abilities. There's a lot of stuff here, and some of it's cool, some of it's fun, but a lot of it feels really useless, and I imagine if we had statistics for it, we'd see that probably 60 to 70% of this stuff never even gets picked. I mean, there's some things in there that really stand out as cool, like the rewind ability, but no one's really using them because they're just not incredibly useful. They don't even really represent enough of a fun factor to be utilized. There are a few that do, like the ticks, for example. I always like to jokingly run Radar Jammer, but the reality is it only stays up for like 2 or 3 seconds. I'd like to see the boost, if they're going to continue to exist, function in a way where they feel like they can sometimes counter each other, and again, where they add additional value to the player in terms of how they actually craft their own unique Titanfall playstyle. That's the one thing that I feel Titanfall 2 has been missing as a whole, if we really want to touch on everything we just talked about, is a way for the individual to truly create their own playstyle within the experience based around the core gameplay loops. Right now it's kind of broken into 2 different segments. You play mobile or you play stationary, and there are tools that the game gives you to do either of those things. And on that note, I leave you guys with my final Titanfall 2 loadout. Maybe I'll do another one, but it always sounds really dramatic when I say it's my final Titanfall 2 loadout. I mean, who knows? Maybe the next time I actually sit down to do a loadout, it'll be in the Titanfall 3 alpha or the beta or something like that. I really don't know. I don't have the answers, but we're just a few days away from hopefully getting some of those answers, or at least continuing to hope that we eventually get answers. I really have no idea when Titanfall 3 is going to be revealed, but again, I do feel like it makes sense for it to happen this year, considering the development cycle and the way that Respawn likes to do things. This was, again, less of a loadout and more of a loadout for the sake of touching on some of the things that I've wanted to talk about with Titanfall 3 in a different and, I guess you could say, more unique way. I also know you guys just love these loadouts, even if it's like something as deadly and as just straightforward as the car, the RE45, and tone. There's no doubt that if you take this out onto the frontier, you're going to kill a lot of people as long as you can shoot in a straight line, and that's kind of the wonderful thing about this class. Honestly, this is sort of my hunt G2 AWOL cloak Spitfire user loadout. Like when I know we're going up against a team stacked with that sort of a loadout, this is what I turn to because Tone is incredible at hunting down pilots. Like the 40mm and its splash damage is just unbelievable, and if you can land precision shots, you're just gonna pink miss people out of the air all day long. So if you're like looking for a way to just murder people who have made you salty, this is like the anti-salt class. It won't make you salty anymore because you've just now made them salty. Have fun with it. Try not to take the game too serious. I see so many people like, oh my god, dude, you use a less skilled loadout, bro? Oh my god. The funny thing is, then I go ahead and use the softball, and I get like 14 kills, and people are like, wow, bro, you're real bad at Titanfall 2, and I'm just like, listen here, man. It's a video game. Have fun. Play smart. Play to learn things. I don't remember how my old intro used to go, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say about some of the things I've touched on today in this video. Like, how do you feel about boost? How do you feel about pilot abilities, weapon attachments? These are things we've kind of touched on in other videos, but we've now got them here together all in the same video. So if you want to go ahead and drop your thoughts on some things you'd like to see change as we go into Titanfall 3 or things you'd like to see stay the same, now's your chance to do that. Drop that thought, drop that comment down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
You have been brought here for a purpose, the most important task of your lives.